Hi students, today we are going to continue the lesson number 4, pollination. In this lesson, today we are going to do is types of flowers. Depending upon the presence of 4 whorls in the flower, flowers are of 2 types. Number 1 is a complete flower. Number 1 is complete flower. Complete flower has all 4 whorls present in that. The 4 whorls are calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Now in the last part of this lesson, the last video, we have learned that what is calyx, what is corolla, androecium and gynoecium. I would like to recollect that again. What is calyx? The sepals are collectively called calyx. Now what is corolla? Petals are collectively called corolla. Now the third part is androecium. Third whorl is androecium. Now what is androecium? We learned stamens. Stamen has 2 parts, that is anther and filament. That stamens are collectively called androecium. They are the male reproductive part. The last whorl is gynoecium. Gynoecium is, we learned carpel in the flower, carpels. Carpels are collectively called gynoecium. Carpels are the female reproductive part of a flower. So now you understood what are the 4 whorls. If all these 4 whorls are present in a flower, then that flower is called a complete flower. Now the second type is incomplete flower. Second type of flower is incomplete flower. In this, any one whorl is absent. That is why it is called an incomplete flower. Now complete flower example is the China rose. Then incomplete flower example corn. Example corn, sweet corn flower. That is the example of incomplete flower. Depending on the presence of female and male reproductive part in the flower, flowers are of 2 types. Number 1, unisexual flowers. Unisexual flowers, otherwise incomplete flower. Unisexual, that word itself, it says either one reproductive part is present in that. Either male or female reproductive part is present in the flower. Such kind of flower is called unisexual or monosexual flowers. Example, papaya, corn, watermelon. These flowers are unisexual flowers. The next one is bisexual flowers. That bisexual word itself, it says both the sex organs are present. Both male and female reproductive part is present in that flower. That is why that flower is called bisexual flower, otherwise complete flower. Example, hibiscus, mustard, lily. Now we'll see pollination and its process. What is pollination? The process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is called pollination. Pollination, there are 2 types. Number 1, self-pollination. Number 2, cross-pollination. We'll see each one in detail. As I said, there are 2 types of pollination. The first one is self-pollination and the second one is cross-pollination. Now first we'll see what is self-pollination. The process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a same flower of the same plant is called self-pollination. I repeat, the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower of the same plant is called self-pollination. Otherwise, it is called autogamy. The second one is cross-pollination. In cross-pollination, you can see here two flowers are there, whereas in self-pollination, only one flower. So you understood what is self-pollination. Now we'll see cross-pollination. The process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a different flower of the different plant is called cross-pollination. Otherwise, it is called allogamy. In this, I said different plant, but it should be the same kind, not different kind. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a different flower of a different plant, the same kind. Okay, then it is called cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is otherwise called allogamy. Before going into agents of pollination, we'll see emasculation. What is emasculation? Manual removal of stamen is called emasculation. Manual removal of stamen is called emasculation. It is the technique to remove stamens before they mature. It is done to prevent self-pollination in flower. Emasculation is a process. What process it is? Manual removal of stamen. And that is done because to prevent self-pollination. That is a technique. Okay. Emasculation is a technique to remove stamens from a flower, and that is, it should be done before the stamens become mature. Emasculation, manual removal of stamen is called emasculation. It is the technique to remove stamens before they mature. It is done to prevent self-pollination in flower. Now we'll see agents of pollination. There are three agents here: pollination by insects, pollination by wind, pollination by water. First we'll see pollination by insects. We all know that insects visit flowers. Which kind of flowers they visit? The first thing is the flower should be attractive, bright in color. Then it should produce sweet smell. Then there should be nectar. We know that insects visit flower to suck the nectar, that is their food. So these insects, they'll visit the flower, then the pollen grains in the flower or in the anther, these pollen grains should be sticky. Then it sticks to the legs of these insects, and these insects from one flower to the other flower, it keep on visiting. So from one flower, it carry pollen grains to the other flower. That is how pollination takes place by insect. Then pollination by wind. In this case, these flowers should have plenty pollen grains. Then the pollen grains should be lightweight. Then only it can carry by wind. It should be dry, not wet or sticky. In this case, pollination by wind, the pollen grains should be dry, lightweight, and it should not be sticky, and it should be many in numbers, so that wind can carry and pollen grains can goes to the other flower stigma, and then pollination can take place. Then third one, pollination by water. In this case, water carry pollen grains from one flower to the other flower's stigma, and then pollination takes place. Let's see the difference between insect pollinated flowers and wind pollinated flowers. First we'll see insect pollinated flower. In insect pollinated flower, flowers should be large in size and it should be bright in color to attract insects. If the flowers are large in size and bright in color, then insects are attracted to that. Whereas in wind pollinated flowers, flowers are small in size and they are not that attractive. It doesn't need to be attractive because it is not going to be pollinated by insects. Then second point, in insect pollinated flowers, flowers should produce some nectar and it should have some smell. Then the insects are attracted to that flower. In wind pollinated flowers, no need of nectar, no need of scent. No nectar or scent is produced. Then third point is pollen grains are sticky. I already said insects visit the flower, then when the pollen grains are sticky, then only it sticks to the legs of the insects and then they can carry on their legs and go to the other flower. When they go to the other flower stigma, when they go and sit on the stigma, then this pollen grains are transferred to that stigma. So that is the process there. So here in insects pollinated flowers, the pollen grains should be sticky. Otherwise insects cannot carry. So pollen grains are sticky in insect pollinated flowers. Whereas in wind pollinated flowers, it should not be wet or sticky. It should be dry enough so that wind can carry. Pollen grains are dry there in wind pollinated flowers. Now insect pollinated flowers, pollen grains are produced in less number. It doesn't need to produce in many numbers, less in quantity. And whereas in wind pollinated flowers, pollen grains are produced in large numbers. Why? Because wind is carrying. All the pollen grains may not carry by wind and it may not reach to the stigma. That is why it should be many in numbers, large numbers it should be produced. Then the wind can carry and some get stick to stigma and then pollination takes place. That's the reason in wind pollinated flowers, pollen grains are produced in large numbers. And one more thing, in wind pollinated flowers, stigma size is large. Then it can catch the pollen grains. and it should be feathery. The stigma should be feathery and it should be large in size. That is also there. So with this, I hope this lesson got over, and in the next video I will give you notes. So the first objectives will do, and then we'll do the answer the followings. If you like my video, please like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay tuned.